Oh, I work with quite a few student athletes, and it's really interesting how sophisticated some of the coaches get too with trying to suss out are we your first choice? Are you coming? And then my families are like, well, if I say yes to this, then if I say no, then they're going to drop me. But then I don't know if my other schools are going to. It really gets tricky doing that dance. The one thing that. Hey, Susan. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
This is our fifth one. This is our third one coming on the college side. We're doing a Grinding Your Gears series here. And I'm sharing things that grind my gears, that rankle me, that irritate me. And we're getting some commentary from two very, very seasoned admissions people who are also co-hosts on our Your College Bound Kid podcast. So this one is coaches. They've told a student that you passed the pre-read and we have a spot for you. And then they end up wiggling out at some point later from that verbal commitment. Of course, it's not officially an offer until like the admission office comes through with the letter. But there's an understanding in this world that, when you get through a pre-read and the coach says you've got a spot, that you can count on that. And of course, a lot of times the athlete has now lost other opportunities from other schools. And I do understand. We did a whole podcast on Your College Bound Kid with Andy Strickler. Remember that 7-parter I did on athletics? It was like, is it never going to end? Mm-hmm. We did a 7-parter on pre-reads.
It was very good, though. Very helpful.
Yeah, but he went into the different reasons why schools back out. And sometimes it can be above the coach's level. It could be a budgetary thing where it comes back and you're told that, there's 5 spots for your sport now. I'm sorry, budget reasons. But oftentimes I found an athlete who's better than you, who wants to come, and that's the cold business of I want to win and be competitive, and I don't want to say no to this athlete. And I'm sorry, but I told you that things were good, but it's just unfortunately things are not going to work out. That one really, really ticks me off. Thoughts?
Absolutely. I really think that every recruited athlete should have this conversation with their admissions counselor and say to their admissions counselor or the athletic liaison on the admissions staff, here's what I'm hearing from the coach. Can you translate this for me from your perspective as who's actually going to make the decision on my application? And get it from admissions, because as you said, Mark, the coach is not the one printing and signing the admission letter.
But from your standpoint on that, Christina, would you definitively give anything until letters go out officially, or would you be a little evasive on that if a family wanted to know, like, I want to know, I want to make sure this coach doesn't back out? How would you handle that?
So the process it's murky, right? Because a lot of times it may have nothing to do with that student. It may have more to do with the fact that the coach is trying to balance their AI with the team. And AI is the academic index, right? So every team has an AI index that can't go below a certain number. And that AI is comprised of the student's GPA, their rank, and their test scores, right? And so they need to stay within a certain margins, right? And so if they have a student that they really, really want, who has kind of a lower AI, then they got to balance that with someone who's higher, right? And so that's where that finagling sometimes will come in as they're trying to balance their class. So it's a shaping process in the same way that it is with the rest of the class. I think the hard part is that you've had a coach that's been recruiting you, and you've done the pre-read, and you've come to campus, and they're all excited about you, and then all of a sudden they're not, and so and that can be really disheartening. But sometimes it's a timing thing as well. And some of that is beyond the coach's control. That's just NCAA and just when schools can recruit and when we can start doing pre-reads. So yeah, it's athletics is tough. I dealt with it and I didn't really like it, but I mean, it's complicated and very emotional.
Oh, I work with quite a few student athletes, and it's really interesting how sophisticated some of the coaches get too at trying to suss out, are we
Mhm.
your first choice? Are you coming? And then my
Mhm.
families are like, well, if I say yes to this, then if I say no, then they're going to drop me. But then I don't know if
Mhm.
my other schools are going to come. It really gets tricky doing that dance. The one
Yeah.
thing that we should say here is we're talking about how academic schools function here, either very academic D1s
Mhm.
or academic D3s, because there's
Right.
a large swath of schools out there. If you're academically qualified, the athlete gets
Yeah.
the coach gets a certain number of spots, and they literally can say they really get to pick and choose. As long as the person, like if you're talking about football players at big Division 1, none of this stuff is happening. This whole
Mhm.
this AI and all this stuff, like this is more
Mhm.
high end D1s and high end D3 schools that have this
D1
problem.
Ivy. Yeah,
Yes,
so that is my
yes,
background. So yes.
yes, yes. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about with the pre-read, right? Because
Yeah.
very different for you going to LSU as a baseball player. If the coach wants you, as long as you can get into the school, and especially now because they've
Exactly.
gotten rid of some of the clearinghouse things that used to be in place
Right.
before with minimum qualifications. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about Ivy and academic D3 schools and how athletics works at those schools. So, um, yeah, I mean, students have to really have a couple backups
Yeah.
that they're they've cultivated, and hopefully the school wants them and they want the school, and not just put all your eggs in one basket and continue to cultivate. Of course that gets harder because as you get to deadlines, those coaches need to fill their team. So if it's either obvious you're a backup, or it's maybe not as clear, they're committing elsewhere because at the end of the day they need to fill their roster.
Well, and
So
what's the timing on that, Mark? Because most coaches now say you have to, if you want to have my endorsement, you have to apply ED. So we don't have national letters of intent anymore, right? At the D1 level, but at D3, it's always been early decision. And at the Ivy level too, that where you had to be.
there are
Mhm.
exceptions for someone who's extraordinary, you know.
Mhm.
Like always, if you're extraordinary, they'll make an exception. And the timing differs by the conference. Like the NESCAC is probably the most rigid. New England Small College Athletic League. That's all happening at start of July. I mean, you're getting an offer. You got 48 hours, 24 to 48
Oh,
hours to make a decision. Um,
Mhm.
Meanwhile, some other very selective schools and other conferences, they might still be having visitors come in August. So the timing does vary based on the conference. And while ED is kind of the default for most athletes that want spots, exceptions are made for superstars that are game changer type athletes.
Yeah.
Did you
For
also have
Barnard,
that as well at Barnard? Were there exceptions for a superstar
uh,
that?
rarely.
Mm-hmm.
We usually started doing pre-reads. Those opened up as of July 1.
Mm-hmm.
And for the athletes that the coaches were certain of and were
Yeah.
great and had very strong pre-reads, we would give them likely letters.
Sure.
And the expectation is that they would apply an early decision.
Yeah.
It rarely was there someone who was coming on who was going to be a standout that wasn't applying in early if they were
Mm-hmm.
applying in regular.
Mm-hmm.
And the expectation, especially at a school like Columbia and Barnard, like, regular decision is tough, and
Mm-hmm.
so there was always that kind of expectation that you know
I had a
we can't
student
always guarantee.
I worked with a few years ago, and they were told they used the 1 through 5 scale. 5 is like
Mm-hmm.
pretty much strongly
Mm-hmm.
in, and they were told
Mm-hmm.
you're a five ED,
Mm-hmm.
but you're a 4 in regular.
ah,
Now,
Mm-hmm.
part of that was because this student was so strong, they were likely to get into the school without needing any athletic push.
Mm-hmm.
So that was part of it as well. So the admission office was like, this is a student we probably would take without an athletic push. But part of it also was they knew the student didn't want an ED, and the school still wanted to maintain. I'll tell you, this was Occidental. I can put it out there. It was Occidental College. So like there's different schools do it a little differently,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of that's what also makes this process so complicated. Never a dull day in the world of admissions.
Never.
Thanks, ladies. Oh,
See you
by the
later.
way, if you're liking this content, please like, subscribe, share, and click the bell notification. As soon as we drop a new video, it'll drop right in your box. Thanks.